Now, Argentina has avoided another major financial crisis after its creditors overwhelmingly backed a new debt deal. The $65 billion agreement has diffused fears of another messy default for Argentina. A welcome relief then for the country, which has been in recession since 2018, and the coronavirus pandemic, well, it's only made matters worse. Well, our business editor, Stephen Carroll, is here with more. Stephen, first of all, just explain to us exactly what this deal is.
So effectively, this group of creditors have agreed to take repayments over a longer period than had been originally provided for, which effectively means they'll be getting back around 55 cents in every dollar that they were owed. The effective interest rate that they're going to receive is going to come down as well. This deal took 9 months to negotiate. It was agreed at the start of August, but creditors then had to vote on it, and that's the results that we're getting on Monday night in Buenos Aires. 99% of them backing it, so a huge endorsement of this deal. That's a really big relief for Argentina. These had been very difficult negotiations. The Argentinian government had threatened to walk away at one point. There had been lots of effort put into getting this deal done. So the fact that it's gotten over the line and creditors have approved it is a huge step forward for Argentina in dealing with this problem. It brings to an end their 9th debt default, the 3rd this century. The most recent had happened in May. It also means that Buenos Aires won't face the same sort of cutting off in the international markets that, for example, it did in 2001 when it defaulted on debt then. The issue, though, is that this is only part of the bigger picture of the economic crisis in Argentina. The country overall has a debt pile of over $320 billion. So $65 billion this deal is worth. It's only a part of that. The country has been in deep recession. It's in its 3rd year of recession now, 5.7% contraction predicted by the IMF this year. Attempts by the government to try and prop up the value of the currency, which has collapsed, have led to huge levels of inflation, which, again, Argentina has experienced several times over the past couple of decades. The most recent figures say that inflation is running at over 40% annually, so massive price increases for people to try and deal with. That's caused huge hardship as well. Poverty levels have skyrocketed as a result. The World Bank estimates now that in terms of children in Argentina, over half of them are living in poverty. So a much broader economic crisis, as you say, even further exacerbated by what's happening with the pandemic.
Yeah, so the government's trying to deal with all that and the more difficult negotiations to come, if there could be, with the IMF.
So one of the other big creditors that Argentina has in that $323 billion is the IMF. The IMF agreed a bailout in 2018 with Argentina, with the previous government, for a total of $57 billion, the biggest amount ever being lent by the IMF to a single country. So it was a big deal for the fund as well. 44 billion of that has already been lent. But when President Alberto Fernandez took over a year ago, he said, we don't want any more IMF money because what we have to give in exchange is too much and we don't want to continue with that austerity. So his government is now seeking to renegotiate that debt as well. It'll be a very different kind of negotiation. The IMF doesn't take haircuts on its debt. It'll always make you pay back the full amount. But what they can negotiate on is how long that has to be paid back over, and also the terms, the economic reforms, the austerity that's needed in return. Those are going to be very difficult negotiations. The President has already spoken with the IMF chief, Kristalina Georgieva, last week. The government is in contact with them now about trying to open up these set of talks as well. President Fernandez and his government are firmly anti-austerity. The IMF demands austerity, usually, or demands reforms, they call it, in exchange for their money. But the fund as well is also going to be very conscious of the fact that the world is facing this unprecedented economic crisis with COVID-19. It's going to be a very difficult balancing act for both sides to make sure that they can work out a deal so that Argentina can sustain this debt, but at the same time try and help those most in need who are living in Argentina.